Yeah, hello. Episode number 18. 18. The Age of Majority. And we're going to introduce our good friend from Holland. But first of all, I want you, VJ, to introduce yourself in your full glory.
Yeah, okay. This is me, the glorious Vijay from Holland.
Fine,
and,
whatever then. Okay.
The Netherlands. I don't think...
Good God.
So somebody was... I was attending a training and someone was asking me, okay, introduce yourself, where are you from? And I said, okay, I'm Vijay, I'm from Netherlands. And everybody was like, oh, okay, that's decent enough because you only need to zoom into that than telling which city I'm from. So it doesn't matter for Netherlands, I think. Oh, they're going to kick me out now. Fuck. Okay.
No, but it just means. But you're not really from the Netherlands, are you?
No.
You're living in. You're broadcasting from the Netherlands.
Yeah. But
currently residing.
Currently residing in Den Haag. Actually, I think 200 meters away from the sea. So
really.
Yeah.
Watch out.
It was beautiful, by the way. Today we had lots of snow here today in the Hague. It was white beach, beautiful. Very rare occurrence. I think 6 years ago we had lots of snow.
I thought it would usually be a white beach there, though.
Well, sandy. It's not completely white.
I meant the people, but okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's
white
true.
And then maybe sometimes quite red, I would think.
Probably, if it is too hot. Okay, I'm not going to say anything, but they're going to kick me out, man. No.
All right. Okay. Yeah. I don't think they're listening. Okay, so I'm Ray McDermott from Belgium, and we've got our special guest on Mr. Gijs from the Netherlands. Introduce yourself, Gijs.
Yes, I am Gijs. I'm also in the Netherlands. I'll specify that I'm in Amsterdam, where I live. And it's also been a white day here too, due to the snow, and cold as well.
Right. So, Gijs, you're another one of these guys who nobody can pronounce their names apart from yourself, yeah?
Yeah.
So what you call yourself the Gijs, though, the Geezer. So from now on, we can just call you Geezer or the Gijs. Is that right?
Well, you have to keep trying to say Gijs correctly, and then.
All right. But are you going to judge me if I say Gijs and?
Well, that's close enough.
Is that close enough? Is that good? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because I live in Belgium. We have a weak version of Dutch called Flemish, obviously, and they don't really have the strong that the Dutch do. So I don't get used to that.
Well, they don't even have the G in most of the Netherlands. Well, like half of it doesn't have it either. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Even for the Netherlands, my name is only known by half of the people. So. I have run into this before. I have a very internationally unfriendly first name, and then the last name as well, because it has like a W in it, but it's not a W. It's like a U and then another U. So that's also convenient.
So, Gijs, it is then.
Yes.
Did I say it correctly? Yeah, perfect.
Out of 10, what are you going to give him, Gijs? Yeah.
Well, in my name I always go for good enough. This one qualifies as good enough.
It's so hard to please Dutch people. Damn it. Okay. So, Gijs, can you give us some idea about your Clojure experience? Of course, I know you from Amsterdam Clojure meetup, and also you gave a couple of talks at the meetup as well as the last Dutch Clojure Day. So you're involved in the Clojure community in general. So can you give us about your experience? Where do you work? How did you get into Clojure? Your entire biography, essentially.
All right. Well, then we have to go back. I was a student.
Okay, hold on. Not that far back, okay?
Well,
you're quite young, aren't you? You're quite young, so okay, screw it.
Well, I think I'm the youngest here today, but I'm 32.
Okay, well, give it every 3 or 4 years. Give us in those chunks. Yeah.
Well, we're limited by the history of Clojure itself, I guess, for it to be relevant. So then we are in. I was a student studying computer science, and then I did a class on functional programming, and I really quite liked that. And it was a nice contrast to all the other courses I took. And from there, I started to look online for other functional programming languages, and eventually also stumbled on Clojure. And that's really how I got started. The first thing I did.
What did they use? What did they use for FP in your university? Did they use Scheme, or did they use something else, Lispy, or was it something?
No,
else?
It was something called Miranda, which is like an ML.
Cool.
It has like a Haskell syntax.
Yeah.
Well, the coolest thing it had is that it was a really simple program where you could run your Miranda programs, but it also had a very simple like GUI language, like a little stack-based, draw this, then that, then that, then that, then that. So you could make very nice little UIs with it as well. And it was a very nice contrast to all the Java things we did and aspect-oriented programming and all sorts of more convoluted stuff.
Okay. Which university was that?
This was in Twente, in the east of the Netherlands.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, we're going east now. That's cool. Okay. But anyway, so you started with Clojure then after your university?
Well, during. So the one big thing I did, I had to do my master thesis and build a little tool for that as well. And I started using Scala because this wasn't a plugin for Eclipse, the editor. I used Scala, but that went nowhere. And then I used Clojure instead, and that went quite well. And at my university, you learn Java already, so then Clojure is a good fit as well. So that was the first thing I did.
Okay. So how did your experience with Clojure progress then after that?
Well, then I was after my master's, I was of course done, and then I had to look for a job. So I was like, I'd like to work with Clojure, but that failed, or at least I could not find a Clojure job at that time. So instead, I went to work at a Ruby on Rails website made with Ruby on Rails at a little startup.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that was quite nice. I was there for a year, and I learned a lot about just keeping websites online. It was quite nice.
Yeah.
And I was able to sneak in some Clojure code on the back end to something that every week had to import some CSV files. So we did that with Clojure at some point.
Ah, okay.
So that was quite nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then after that job, I did only Clojure work.
Okay, so right now you're working for a Clojure company, or you're doing freelancing, or what are you working on these days?
Well, last year I was freelancing. I had a gig, but it ended a bit abruptly at the end of last year.
Yeah.
So for the last month and a half, I have not been working at all.
Okay.
So people can hit you. People can hit you up when they hear this show, or are you just about to start a new gig?
Oh, I should have been looking, but I have not yet been doing that. So if you need a Clojure programmer in Amsterdam or remote, then do get in contact.
Cool. So you heard here first.
Yeah.
Okay. So during the Clojure work, what kind of applications that you are working on when you are working on Clojure?
Well, they're all in at least some sort of a web-based backend thing. So there was one that was advertisements on mobile phones. There was a medical database system.
Yeah.
Sort of like almost like a Datomic-esque structure for medical data.
Okay.
An educational startup to kids to teach kids math. That was quite nice.
Yeah.
And then a Clojure script front end dashboard for a bit of a sort of trading application.
Okay. Well, that's pretty diverse domains.
Yeah,
That's
but
very
all
diverse domains,
web-based.
Yeah.
Sorry?
They were all web-based mostly.
Okay.
So you were doing mostly the back end stuff, Gijs, or were you doing the front end Clojure script stuff as well?
Usually both. Depend if
you're a full stack guy.
Full stack.
Yeah, I suppose. But not. I'm not an expert in databases, so I cannot do. Of course, I can put up a database, but I wouldn't call myself like a SQL expert or something. So I was always quite. I was quite happy to have
Sorry, go ahead.
I would prefer there to be like a dedicated DevOps guy or something there.
Yeah.
I know my way around that, but to be responsible for 100% uptime, that's...
that's a myth. There is no 100% uptime.
Well, I think these days anyway, you just need to plug into some like backend as a service and you're all good. Don't worry about those guys. Just buy the DevOps. That's isn't that the way to do it these days?
I think you can, but it's very expensive and a bit opaque perhaps. So
yeah, that's true.
If it does go wrong, then who do you call?
Amazon. Just blame Amazon. I mean, it's nice, right? Because if you're hosting it on Amazon, like if your site is down, then essentially like 90% of the internet is down anyway.
Yeah,
so you can just blame fuck it, yeah.
Then you send the link to the status board and everything is green check marks. And
Exactly. And then you say, okay, everything is down. But I think the database thing is interesting because remember recently the GitLab guys had some unfortunate situation that they deleted production data from Postgres.
I saw that.
Yeah, but I love that. I think the guy was also on Hacker News, so they're posting the postmortem of the situation, and then somebody commented that, oh my god, the guy who deleted the database must be like devastated or something, and then he just commented, it's me and I'm still here. And if you click on his profile, he just changed his description. It used to be database expert, and then he has now database in the parenthesis removal expert.
Yeah, I saw that too. That's amazing.
I love the way that they're treating it. That's how it should be. Shit happens. So
exactly. I like this. There's a nice Twitter account I follow from Erica Joy, and she said hug ups to the guys. So I thought, hug ups is nice. Yeah. That's what you want.
Yeah, hug ups. Yeah.
But just reading that story was a lot of like sweating. Just reading that story, you're like sweating, like, oh my god, I know where this is going, and then like, oh no, that gut feeling, like, oh my god, crap.
Yeah. you can put some background music to the story while you're reading it, like dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
I had this at my first job too, actually.
Oh.
I had a little like side job at the university. It was like this little company that made like these websites for the local other companies. And then like the first day I got put on some project, like in the database, please add these people or something. And then the first thing I did was accidentally remove the wrong row. So then I had to go back to like the boss, like, I deleted something, I think. And then he's like, no, it's all right. I made a backup before you started. So then I was like, yes, great. But I do wonder, like, does he always do that? Or was he like, I don't trust you that much, so I'm just going to put one in.
Yeah. Or maybe he gives you the connection details to like playing database.
Yeah,
and actually,
it wasn't even real to begin with.
Exactly.
It might have well been. It was a good lesson to learn on day one. So.
Yeah.
Exactly. But anyway, let's get back to Clojure then. So I think obviously the first question is Emacs or
oh my god,
some other shit.
Oh my god.
Well, that's easy. Emacs.
There you go. That's it. Yeah, I think we're done. I think he's my favorite guest again. So that's pretty much what we wanted to ask in the podcast. Like, he says Emacs, he just done. Anyway,
so you don't want to be productive then, because. You don't want any joy in your life.
I don't think I have to be here for this part, I suppose. Just the two of you.
It's it's okay. I think Gijs, you need to humor the people with lesser power tools. I think they have just tools. They don't have power tools, so that's okay. That's fine. Yeah. Anyway, so Clojure stuff. So most of the stuff that you worked on, you said that those are web applications. Can you give us some idea about what kind of libraries that you used or what kind of stack it was?
Well, it's almost always then on the front end some Clojure script, and on the back end Clojure. And whenever that was for an actual company, then it was usually some sort of ring composure at the back end. Usually to like a Postgres database. In the front end Clojure script, I used Ohm, like the original Ohm, not the Ohm next.
Yeah.
Ohm previous. Yeah.
Yeah, Ohm before or something. Yeah, that's mostly that's mostly it.
I think Ohm previous is the right way. Yeah, you have previous and next.
Yeah, that works.
I'll cut that. Okay. Yeah.
But
DJ,
what happens if you get next Ohm?
Yeah, it's next. Yeah, it's a Windows then, isn't it? Should be just Ohm Windows, because you just have to keep on clicking next.
Ohm Wizard.
And then finally cancel. Anyway, but
then you get the blue screen of death. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uninstall.
So this has become like bashing everything episode.
Don't worry, we're not started yet.
So Ohm for any of the commercial projects or just your side project or something?
No, this was for a commercial project.
Okay, so how was your experience with that one? Because I think right now you said you recently built a tool called CREPL, and I saw that you built it using Reframe and Reagent, I think. So can you contrast this experience with Ohm?
Oh yeah. Of course, Reframe, and it just has a very nice guide, and that all came after Ohm. So we used Ohm when it was very new at that time. Yep. So in Ohm, it was a lot of getting used to the cursors in particular. But we did manage to get up the thing like from nothing to like working in like a month. So that worked quite well. But Ohm looked it was very at one point it got a bit messy in the Ohm thing. That could also have been us, but just this whole cursor thing and like how to structure the whole application, that was not readily apparent to us. And then, like you said, I use Reframe, and there it's quite easy to see how to structure the program, because they have like a long guide where for each piece of what you might want to do, call out to an external servers, have state somewhere, they all tell you where to put it. So then you can just follow along, I guess.
Okay. So you also had some, last time you were talking a bit about how to build applications using Pedestal, right?
Yes.
So you have used it on, I think, on side projects or on commercial projects, Pedestal framework?
Pedestal I've used only on side projects. Okay. Like I said, all the commercial projects would always be a Ring and then Clojure.
Okay. So what is the fundamental advantage of Pedestal then, or at least from your point of view?
Well, having used Ring and Clojure a lot, Pedestal has a lot of stuff in it already, which I always start to look for when you use Ring and Clojure for a while. So the basics is the two-way route definition. So you can give every route a name, and if you make a link to any path you have yourself, you can just call that by name. It's a pretty default thing you would want. BD has that as well, for instance.
Yeah.
And also, whenever I get started on a web project, particularly if it's just Ring, you need a bunch of default stuff in there. Like maybe you just have like a Hello World index page, but then the content type is not even set up properly to serve HTML or what have you, or the CSS file comes in with a MIME type, I don't know. And in Pedestal, a lot of that stuff is already like, the basics are already in there, secure headers and what have you. So I'm just thinking like maybe Pedestal will be like the common thing that we'll always use as a basis for web apps. So that's why I started to look into that.
Okay. So it's more like a out of the box experience is better than composing different libraries together, something like that.
Yes, because I mean the promise is always like in Clojure we don't have frameworks, you just combine libraries. But I always find that you need to combine a lot of libraries, and how to combine those is not always that apparent to me, at least.
Yeah. So what do you think about the new framework called Arachne or something? Well, that is still in the going, right? The crowdsourced one called Arachne or Web.
Yeah, I think you pronounce it Arachne. Yeah, I've looked into the first. They did. There was like a little bit of like pre-alpha release of that.
Yeah.
But what it seems to do, or like what of the focuses, I'm not sure if I use the same language that they use, but it's all about having components and having them be replaceable and how to configure those. But that's not really a problem I run into a lot. What I'm always hoping for, like if anything gets announced, like a new web thing for Clojure, I always hope it's like some sort of ORM standard solution.
Okay, to connect to the database and
something like, perhaps not Active Record, but something like that. Acto in Elixir is quite nice.
So you think that you've been infected by Ruby on Rails?
Well, in Ruby on Rails, you could build like a blog in 15 minutes, or whatever the promise was. And I think in Clojure, it's, I always need like at least a day to set all the basics up before I could even, get started with like save a comment for a blog post. Like, what I do now is just get an old project and rename everything and start from that. But there's not really a standard start from scratch solution there.
Yeah. But compared to the Ruby experience, because if you have done Ruby on Rails recently, then obviously you have better tooling and all that stuff. Because I did some Ruby on Rails application sometime in 2008, I think. But that was a horrible experience for me because I had to deploy on IIS with the Windows, with fast CGI and everything. So it was hilarious. And it was Ruby on Rails, I think 1.9 or just transitioning into 2. So of course, even at that point, they have all these generators and everything. That was pretty useful. But what is your experience between comparing Rails development versus the different types of Clojure web application development?
Yeah, well, when I used it, it was in 2010, 2011, I think. So I don't even know what Rails version we were on, but
probably 3, I think. 3 just started, or yeah.
But it's mostly like I know some people that use like PHP, and then I'm like, wow, PHP. But then they show me their website, and it has an automatic admin toolbar at the bottom with debugging slow queries and all sorts of things. And I'm like, well, I can use Clojure on the front end and the back end, but I don't have a lot of tools readily available that you would like to have. So
yeah.
I think there's like a basis for, or maybe an expectation for a basis of web application development that it's not really available in Clojure yet, that you would get in other languages, either Django in Python or Elixir or Ruby on Rails or something like that.
Okay. And of course, that brings us to the latest thingy that's based on Pedestal that I think Ray was mentioning before. Was it Waze or was whatever? What's your intro to that one, Ray? I mean, you were trying that out, or you heard about it?
No, I haven't tried it out. No, I'm not. Okay. I'm unlike Gijs. I'm not a huge. I don't know much about Pedestal. I only know that it's kind of like you say, it's a framework, batteries included. Whenever I've looked at it, I've found it a bit awkward. I think the documentation is a little lacking. So I've never really picked up on it, and I haven't seen much out in the wild with Pedestal either. But I know the Cognitech guys are very keen on it, so they're not idiots. So there must be something there. But I'm just not feeling it myself yet. But I know that this thing that came out through the week was Vars or Vase. I say Vars, so screw it, that's what we'll go with. You can go with what you want, I'm going with Vars. And Vars is like a declarative data description style thing to make datomic databases visible on the internet, which I think is this ORM thing you're talking about, I guess, Gijs.
Well, sort of. Whenever something like that is announced, I always hope it's like a little bit like Ecto from Elixir, but then for Clojure. But then it always turns out to be not that. So Ecto is like the active record for Elixir, and it seems to look quite nice. And I've played around with it a very little bit. But then Vase is something slightly different. Like you say, it's like mostly like exposing datomic easily in web routes on Pedestal, I suppose. And even with Arachne, as Vijay mentioned earlier, they have something called Chimera or something that might be in like this next version, which also perhaps is something like that. We have to wait and see, but I'm always hoping that something is like that. And then Vase again turned out to be something else, which is not really, I haven't used, or I'm not using Datomic at the moment, and I don't have to expose it to the web. So yeah, I don't have no use for it at the moment.
So if you're using, say, Postgres or something like that, what do you use? Honey SQL, or do you use some kind of Clojure thing that sits on top of Postgres, or do you just go raw JDBC?
Well, the Clojure.java.jdbc, that works great. But that is just you type in your SQL query strings, right? So.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think Honey SQL is one of the nicest libraries ever, right? I mean, it's the like post-decessor for, I don't know, can you call it post-decessor? No. I don't know, screw it.
The follow-on?
The follow-up for SQL, YES SQL, right?
Yeah. Is that the one with the SQL and the separate files?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, that's nice because it's letting you write your SQL queries like SQL queries, and it is going to read them and then give you the equivalent Clojure functions based on the comments that you put in. So that's pretty sweet. Then you don't need to worry about this whole ORM thing or how to get the data back or whatever. So you can just use some Clojure, not Clojure, but some sort of a tokens in the query, and then it will automatically detect that okay, this is the function name that I'm going to generate for this query, and you know whether there is an insert query or update query, and that's a really nice take on interacting with the databases. So that's pretty cool.
I think that when you're doing all the JDBC by hand, you've got to be quite careful about SQL injection attacks and things like that. Whereas if you use some kind of intermediary framework where you're not generating the where clauses yourself, I think you've got it's a simpler world for you. You know, it's a simpler, more secure place.
Well, if you use Clojure.java.jdbc, you usually use prepared statements.
Yeah.
So you use the question marks in your query strings and then specify the arguments after. So you're not really splicing strings together. That would be not a great idea.
Oh, okay. Because normally with these prepared statements, you do have these. You can also have dynamic where clauses. You sometimes need that. If everything's fixed, then okay, fair enough. You know, you don't need that. You're just putting in parameters. But often for user-style queries, you do want to add additional things at runtime. But not in your experience. Okay, fair enough. You know, I would be cautious about using, you know, the raw JDBC for that kind of stuff. You'd want to, you know, be a lot more careful there. But if everything's fixed, of course, you're right.
Okay. Let's talk about what you're working on these days. So we just saw a tweet or blog post, I think a couple of days ago. You were talking about CREPL, or how do you pronounce that one, by the way? And I was just cutting short of myself saying it CREPL or so.
Oh, I call it CREPL. So.
Okay, so then from the source, it's called CREPL.
Yes.
So what is it about, and how did you build it?
Well, like I said, I had a freelance gig until the end of last year, and then I had some extra free time. I like things like Firebase, and Firebase has something called Firepad. It's like an Etherpad / Google Docs type thing. And then I also ran into something called GoMix. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's from the Trello and Stack Overflow guys, which is also like a collaborative editor for applications that run continuously and update continuously based on Node.js, I think.
Yeah.
And that looked interesting, so then I thought like, well, I also saw that you can self-host ClojureScript, so you can run ClojureScript and compile ClojureScript in your browser. So I thought, well, let's see if we can combine the two, and that's what became CREPL in the end. Okay,
so for the people who don't know, what exactly is CREPL?
So CREPL is, well, maybe like it's a Google Docs, but then for ClojureScript. So everybody who's looking at who's on the same URL sees the same code, and if you type, everybody else's code get updated at the same time, so you can work collaboratively on the same code. And then because it's ClojureScript, you can also actually run it in your browser.
Ah, sweet. So it's like a Google Wave sort of thingy. Like a long time ago, we had Google Wave, which disappeared into internet.
Yeah, well, I've never used that, but I did see it when I was looking into what's it called, operational transforms or something. Google Waves get mentioned a lot.
Okay, so how do you go on? Sorry, Vijay, go on.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask you about that. How do you? What's your logic for making sure the sequence of keystrokes from the different users is all kind of respected, or how do you do that?
Well, basically use the approach that Firepad uses as well, and that is basically has like a dumb server and then a bit smarter front end. So you have like a sequence of operations, or like a log of changes to the document. So whenever you type something, that is a change that you send to the server, and then if you are the next edit, yours wins. And if you send a change to the server and somebody else already did something before you, then your change loses. It gets transformed on the client side into how it can be the next change. And then you try again. And then, that continuously. And the idea is that not everybody will be typing forever. So at some point, your change will actually be will win. Let's say gets added to the log, and then the whole thing starts again. Right. So it's operational transforms. The actual transformation, if it needs to happen, is on the client side, and it's not on the server side.
Okay. So this is open source code, or?
Well, I've not open sourced CREPL, but there are other OT implementations available online, and tutorials as well.
What is your plan for this one? So compared to Clips, so Clips is not multi-user, right? Is that the difference between Clips and this one?
Yeah, I don't think Clips is multi-user. That's more, and I think they're. You see it a lot on blog posts, so it's like embedded as well. So you can like add little code snippets on your blog, and people can play around with it already there.
Okay. Well, I played with it, and it has Emacs command, so I think I'm happy already with this thing. So that's pretty cool. So I can do Control N, Control P, perfect. So this is the best editor ever already. So can you give us some insight into how did you build it, and what are your plans for this one? So what kind of libraries and...
First, the idea was like... First, it was just to see if I could get operational transforms to work. Just a nice algorithm, I think, or at least I was curious as to like, okay, how does that work, and can I make that work? So it was just fun. Yeah. And then I don't know if you know, but operational transforms, you have one version for like rich text. If you have nice annotations, like you can add a link or maybe a highlight or something, or a bulleted list. If you want to use operational transform for that, there's a lot of special cases, because if you press enter after a bullet list, what happens? But the easy operational transforms is defined just for plain text. It's just characters and perhaps new lines, and that's it. And that's the easy version, and that's the one I use. And you can use that for ClojureScript, because operational transforms doesn't need to know anything about ClojureScript. So then you have ClojureScript code that multiple people can see, and then it's fun, like, okay, and then you can actually compile it and run it in your browser, because ClojureScript has self-hosting support now. So then you have those two things, and then it's the question, okay, if two people see the exact same code and they're running it as well, then what happens? Usually, if you run the same code, then you also see the same output. If you do like a simple arithmetic thing, 3 plus 4, then both people will see 7 if they both run it. But if you have more advanced or whatever fancy code, perhaps you use reagent or UI or something, then you actually have like state in your browser where not everybody will see the same thing. And then, so the final piece for CREPL was to also connect those things. Like you do something in your browser, somebody else as well. How do you make sure that thing is still in sync? And that was the final thing I wanted to tackle, to see if, you can write the code together, you can run it together, but can you also make sure you're actually looking at the same thing? Otherwise, it's perhaps not that useful.
Yeah. So what is the stack in this application? What libraries and what is the wire format that you're using to send the data in and out?
Well, the wire is just it's mostly just WebSockets, and then just first I thought maybe transit over WebSockets or something binary, but in the end it's just print string and read string EDN over the text WebSocket version. The editor is Code Mirror, which is so that's already taken care of basically. That's a very nice library. And then on the front end, a reframe as well. Well, that's about it for the ingredients, I suppose.
Okay, and the backend, do you have pedestal or?
Yes, so that's a pedestal. But as I said, the server is quite dumb. Let's say it doesn't do a whole lot. So this whole conflict resolution is only it's only to see in the database, is this next up the next one in line or not? So it's like a compare and swap type thing, and that's about as smart as it is on the back end.
And so it doesn't do like the authentication stuff yet.
Well, there is authentication, but you can log in with any username, and it assumes that you are actually that person. So I could add some password thing there, but
it's the MongoDB version of authentication.
Or this is like the Lord of the Rings thingy, say your name and enter, like
Yeah.
Or say friend and enter, and that's it. Yeah, I'm a friend, and then that's it. Okay, please come in. That's fine.
Well, for the OT conflict handling, you do need to know, like, did I send it myself or did somebody else send it? So you need some sort of identity. But I didn't want to build in this whole like password and username thing. So I settled on any username is good.
Okay. And all this code is stored on disk, or where do you store this one? So if I I just created a new notebook, whatever you want to call it. And I have it now and I'm using it. So this will be stored in some database? The code that I'm typing in? Okay.
Yeah, the database stores these OT type transforms. So that says like insert this character or delete that character, then a whole sequence of them. So whenever you go to a URL that's already something already happened, then the server does go through all these edits and construct like the whole file for you.
Okay, so it's like a CQRS system then. So you're keeping the log of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sort of, I suppose.
And which database are you using in the backend?
So Postgres.
Ah, cool. Okay. So what are your plans for this one? What do you want to do with this thingy later? Is it just a fun project, or do you want to take it somewhere, or?
Well, the idea was just to do it for fun. So I thought like, well, maybe January I'll spend on this. So I slightly overshot that by a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But everything that I wanted to put in there is now in there. Particularly the last thing to connect the UI. So you see the same state is in there as well. So yeah, for now, of course, I have an endless list of things that could be better or nice to add. But I really do have to look for a job. So
that's true. So there's also a chat thing in that one. So everything is going through the same WebSocket, or how is the WebSocket? What do you call the protocol? How did you define that one? Is it like a command that goes to the backend that says this is a chat message, or what kind of messages you're?
Well, over the WebSockets are just those are vectors with a keyword, and then for chat it's something like I don't know, chat/message, I suppose. Okay. And actually for the chat, I don't save any of that, so it just gets sent out immediately to whoever is on the same URL.
Okay, so it's a Snapchat. It's not actually real chat.
Yeah, that could. I was also thinking, like, does it even need chat? Because you're sharing a text file, right? You could actually type it.
Exactly, I can type in there. Yeah, I just noticed that. I was like, okay, why would I do that? But I'm sure, why not? Why not?
Yeah, I thought maybe some side channel to keep your code clear. Who knows? But it was also the third thing I built just to check if the WebSockets worked. So that's perhaps why it's in there at all.
Yeah. Perhaps this is something that you mentioned already, right? Is it something similar to the new company by the Joel Spolsky company?
Yeah, GoMix. That's what I said. Yes. So that's GOMIX.
Yeah, I think so. So they have similar kind of thing, right? But a bit more like build your entire application in the browser sort of thingy.
Yeah, what they have is whenever you type something, it gets synced to. They host the code for you as well. So some sort of VM or Docker or something. Yeah. So there's like an actual application running on the web that everybody can go to, and that's what you're building. I didn't. I think that's interesting too, but I don't want to host random applications, and I don't even know how to make that work. So, but that was that was how I got thinking like, oh, this would be cool to do with ClojureScript, and then I sort of thought like, that just push everything to the client side and not put too much on the back end. So that's how it ended up where it is right now. But I was really just about.
Go on, sorry. Yeah.
No, that was it. I do. GoMix looked very interesting. So.
Yeah, because I think Amazon just bought an online editor as well, the end of last year, for their environment. So this whole online editing space is quite hot right now, I think. So maybe you should just go over to Silicon Valley, Gijs, and just say, look, give me 20 million, guys. No, sorry, 200 million. Yeah. And you'll get paid back, no problem. Yeah. When Microsoft buy me out in a year's time for $1 billion. Yeah,
I'll sign up
you
for
can
that.
have that. You can have that on me. Okay.
Okay. Could you maybe do the negotiations and then?
Well, I'll definitely pitch in the second round. Yeah.
Oh, cool. No, but I do like the GoMix guys. When at one of the announcement blog posts, it actually said like, when you got started with building stuff on the web, you could just view source and then and then change a bit, play around, and then it would immediately work. And I did the same thing when I was, let's say a bit younger as well. There was also like a website called like Dynamic HTML or something that showed all these fancy features of HTML.
Yeah.
Like all sorts of things moving around and stuff. Yeah. And I did that too. There was like a guy who made some games with JavaScript, and you could actually just see the source, play around with it, change some things. So that.
And then just run it.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. Cool stuff. So you'll be talking about CREPL at Dutch Clojure Days then.
Yeah, well, I always have this with when conferences come around. Like there's stuff I want to talk about, but I'm still actually working on it, so I don't want to commit to like do a talk about it because then there's a deadline. So this was the same thing. Like this was almost done, and then I saw like a final call for papers or something. So like, well, a lightning talk. That's the amount of commitment I can already commit to right now. So I sent it in last minute, like, I want to at least show this, and it got selected. So I'll do 15 minutes, I think it is, maybe 10.
Yeah, I think 15 minutes talk. Yeah. So of course, I mean, I was also part of the DCD organization thingy. So it's nice to see you again at the talk. Sorry, at the event. So the next thing that I wanted to ask you is so what are you looking at these days in Clojure? I mean, is there something exciting, or did you look at the specs, or these kind of things?
Well, one thing I wanted to do with CREPL, I thought like, well, this will be the one. I'll use spec for everything, right? Because I can just try and see, particularly for the operational transform thing. I thought, well, I'll just spec all these ops, right? And then the algorithm, everything will be valid, and then it should be fine. And I can even generate test cases. That would be quite good. But that was the plan. And then also perhaps to spec everything that would go over the WebSocket. That was also a plan, but I have not done that yet. What I did end up using a lot is test.check.
Okay. Like generative testing. Cool.
Yeah, because I was thinking like you just spec an operational transform action or function or whatever, and then you generate 10,000 test cases. But it turns out that all these operations are a little bit dependent on each other, let's say. So there's a property for operational transforms which says if you have a text and then you have an operation A, and then you apply that, and then you have an operation B, which comes after, you apply that. That should be the same if you apply the composition of A and B to the text immediately. That's like a property that holds always. And then if you were to have a generator for just an operation, that would not necessarily be a valid operation A or valid operation B, because in operational transforms, I'm just going to say OT from now on, you need to make sure that the operation is always specified over the whole length of the text. So you have like sort of like a meta parameter that you have to adhere to. So you have maybe a text of 10 characters, then your operation A needs to be an operation from 10 characters to another number. And then B needs to be from that number to another number. Okay. So I have these test cases that first generate the basis text, then an operation that conforms to these is at least that long to some other length, and then an operation B from that length to another length. And then this property you can test. So these actual, if I were to spec just an operation or a transform by itself, that would not immediately be useful to use in this test, because you need like this meta parameter of the change size or the original size of the text to build these operations. So in the end, I used test.check a lot, but spec less than I thought it would.
Okay. And so last time we were discussing with Malcolm Sparks from Jext at some point, and he was describing the Yada framework. And I know that you played with it as well. You built a wiki or something on using Yada.
Yeah.
So what was your impression of Yada?
Yeah. So I both Malcolm Sparks and the guy who wrote Liberator, they also did like a little talk at Euro Clojure. So I was like, I have to look into that again, because I have used Liberator, but I did not use Yada yet. And then the wiki was just, I needed at least a project, something to build. And the Atomic client was released in the same time, so I put all that together and used it at the same time.
Yeah.
And Yada, well, I like the idea of particularly Web Machine, which is like the origin for both Liberator and Yada. And then Yada had async support. And I was like, up to now I hadn't really needed that, but because I use Datomic Client, then for every request, I also have to do another request to Datomic Client. So every request that comes in that you want to handle also is perhaps blocking, or you need to do other requests and wait for the result to come back. So that was a good fit to try this async stuff. So that's why I just, I try to use it. But what I have with Yada and Liberator as well is that in all the Clojure work I've done, rarely did people care that all the particulars of HTTP handling were there, like language negotiations and the more esoteric features of HTTP. I mean, it's always, you need proper content types and what have you, and if you want e-tags, it's nice if there's a default way to do this, but I don't know, that's, perhaps if you make some APIs, that's very useful, but I've never run into a use case where that was a very strict requirement. So this was, the Yada project was also just for fun and to look around to see what's possible in Clojure.
Yeah, but I think probably again, like Malcolm's goal is to have a kind of batteries included framework, whether you need the batteries or not, I guess. That's
Well, what I always find, I've tried this a couple of times as well, is where you have like Liberator and Yada are both like let's say API oriented backend things, but I usually build like HTML pages that humans use. So if you post a form, that is something different than doing a post from like a curl thing or something, because if you submit a form, most users would expect the form to come back and then the fields that are not correct in red or something. And if it succeeds, you want to land at the page of the thing you just created, or maybe the index page with an update message or something like that. Whereas if you follow like maybe like a REST form API type structure, then you return a 201 that nobody knows what to do with, or maybe you return like a 400 that users don't care. So I always find a bit of a mismatch with building like user-facing websites on top of like API frameworks, let's say.
Yeah, I think that the trouble with HTTP is that every player in the HTTP world is so lenient about standards and stuff. So the browsers really don't care. I mean, they're like, sure, I'm going to render everything. Throw anything to me, I'm fine. I'm just going to deal with it. And there is a lot of craft built up on that one. So it's very difficult to get into like a structured way of everybody agreeing to the same standard. So I think that's a tricky part.
Is that true though? Really? I mean, because doesn't Ruby on Rails actually do all that kind of stuff? It does all these 400s and 401s.
No. It's not just
201s. So I'm not quite sure what you're getting at there, Case. Really.
No, well, what I would
it's
like.
Not just
oh, sorry, Vijay, but what I often need to build is let's say a lot of people. If you build like a website that users use, the thing I need is like a form with data in it, and I need to submit the form. I need to validate it. Perhaps the form gets shown again with fields that are invalid. You go through this whole cycle until it's allowed, and then you store it somewhere, and then you redirect somebody to somewhere. That is like a basic flow, but all these API libraries don't have that included, I don't think so.
Yeah. Anyway,
well, I think he would argue that he does, but okay, fair enough. Let him. Maybe he's picked this one up in the chat.
Yeah, well,
but I think you're right. What's interesting about it is that people argue, the HTTP people always argue about the fact that, for instance, web forms themselves are kind of a weird API, because all you can do with those web forms is like you can post, but you can't delete, for instance. They haven't got the web forms are not very good semantically. That seems to be the bit of the web which is still in its infancy. Given, I mean, like you say, its importance in e-commerce can't be overstated, but it's actually very immature, the web form itself.
Yeah, I usually just use get and post. I don't even use like puts and deletes and things, because usually you just have to add like a hidden field for that to munch the method or something.
It's crazy. Yeah, you can't do all of the HTTP things you'd like to do with the standard web forms. That's what I mean. Yeah.
But also, you often in Rails projects, or I see that in Elixir projects as well, that they have like path that get handled for like browser access, and pass for API. So those things are actually two different things, because the flow, I think, for APIs is just a little bit different than it would be for like a web form or something. So, and putting those together is just I think you can, but it's perhaps a bit tedious or inconvenient.
Okay, I think I'm done with my questions. I think. Ray, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, no, I think it's all. I mean, the CREPL stuff is awesome. I think that's really good stuff, and I think anyone that employs you to do the web sort of stuff, Gijs, will be very happy that they've got an expert on board. That's for sure. I think you're doing great work there. So yeah, thanks very much for coming around, coming on, and telling us a bit about what you've done. It's nice actually to talk to someone in the neighborhood in Europe who's done something which has got a bit of global attention, in the Clojure community. So congratulations on that. And I hear you've got, more than like 3 retweets now, so that's doubly awesome.
I'm pretty sure one was from Almere, which is like 20 kilometers from here, so I'm not sure about the global reach of it yet. But
we'll just pretend you've went through the Twitter servers, so we'll call that global.
Exactly. And also the thing is, it's the internet currency. So 3 retweets. Wow, awesome. Yeah. But as Ray was saying, thanks a lot for coming on. And I know that in a couple of days you're going to talk about CREPL at Amsterdam Clojure meetup. I think by the time we put out the episode, it'll be in the past, but still. I will see you at the Dutch Clojure Day, which is going to happen on 25th of March. And we just published the agenda. And of course, Ray will be there as well. I somehow lobbied into annoying people that Ray will be doing the same deaf joke thing that we did at Euro Clojure.
I saw the first one, so I'm expecting all new material.
Okay, you already have pressure now.
Well, the world has moved on since then, so there's plenty of material around. Don't worry. I'm working on it. Yeah, it will be. There will definitely be updates.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm part of the organization of Dutch Clojure Day, and we are almost, I think, ran out of the places and the tickets, quote unquote tickets. So I think in a couple of hours ago, I think we are left with 18 spots and now 12. So hopefully, I think I'll see some of the people who are listening to this podcast there as well, because as we keep on saying, Dutch Clojure Day is the what do you call the place that the genesis? The genesis,
the source, the bron.
Yes, the bron of Defen. So it would be nice to see, familiar faces again there. And we have a great schedule. James Reeves is coming there to talk about transparency through data, and the rest of the talks are pretty amazing. Of course, our special guest tonight, Gijs, is going to talk about CREPL. I don't know, by the time, I think you might want to show some code, but we'll just keep it under the wraps, and then we see there. So that's pretty much it from us, I think, for this episode.
Yeah. Right, brilliant. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Gijs. And thank you, VJ. And thank you, everybody. See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Okay, wouldn't be nice for us to end without saying thanks to all the people that help us. So thanks very much to Katseri for the music. Thanks very much to Lubov for the design. And also to Wouter for all the mixing and fixing all the glitches. Cheers, mate. And cheers, peeps.
Now I have to remember to save the audio recording. Let's